fellow romance readers, I'm Amy.
And I'm Sarah, and this is Post-Book Depression. You know that feeling you get when you finish a good book that you didn't want to end?
Have you finished a book and just weren't ready to move on from the story and its beloved characters? You find yourself needing just a little more? This multi-trope romance podcast gives you the opportunity to dig deeper with us into books we love as we discuss all the reasons we can't move on.
Feeling chatty? You can continue the conversation with us on Instagram at Post-Book Depression Podcast or on Facebook in our Post-Book Depression discussion group.
We would be so grateful if you would subscribe to our podcast and take a moment to leave a review.
Are you ready? Let's discuss.
Hi everyone, welcome to the show. I'm Amy.
And I'm Sarah, and today we're going to be discussing Alone With You by Aly Martinez.
The first few minutes, we're going to do a brief review of this story without any spoilers. Then we're going to shift into a deeper book discussion that's going to include lots of spoilers, but don't worry, we're going to let you know before we do shift into that deeper book discussion.
Right, so before we shift over to that, Amy, tell us what the story's all about.
This emotional second chance romance is about a woman starting her life over, and she buys a restaurant to renovate and runs into a man from her past who is haunted by his internal demons. Sarah, what did you think about Alone With You?
Well, we are huge fans of Aly Martinez, and if you ever meet her in person, she is absolutely hysterical. But I love, even with as funny as she is, that she writes these stories with these characters who endure a lot of trauma.
True.
And she does it really well. I like how she can write these heartbreakingly beautiful characters and still have humor throughout. She's really great about that. This story, it moved me, it surprised me, which it shouldn't surprise me. I kind of was getting on to myself because Aly Martinez is, in my opinion, she's really, really good at the twists and the turns that you don't see coming, but you should suspect that they're going to come if you're familiar with any of her other stories.
Yes.
This one, I did not see it coming, and I was really annoyed with myself because I shouldn't be surprised at this point. I loved it. I loved these characters. I would have to say this is probably my favorite of hers.
Really?
Yeah.
I love to hear you say that.
Yeah, I love it. What did you think?
So true to, like you said, her MO, it's full of shocking twists and turns, which when you go on that fast-paced journey with her writing, it just really, I love that part so much about her writing style. It's very fast-paced. This was a win for me. I loved it.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into our ratings. Angst.
Angst. Do you think it would be more? Because doesn't the story fall under a thriller?
Yes.
Yeah, see, I didn't feel the thrills, so make a note of that. Maybe I'm not sure why they classified it as that. We can dive into that. But so for me, the angst was only a 1.5.
Okay.
And I really kind of felt that was a little bit high.
I was higher. I did
Really?
like 2.25
Really?
or so. Yeah. And I can tell you a little bit more about that in the deeper discussion. There are some heavy elements to it, which kind of is along the angst line for me.
I could see that.
And when we get into the deeper discussion, we can talk about why I felt that way.
Yeah. I guess I expected it to be way higher because I thought it was more thriller.
True,
like
yes.
suspense thriller.
I
Do you know
agree.
what I'm saying?
The
like,
bar,
what's
yeah,
gonna
with
happen?
the descriptors, the bar was higher for me, and so it was definitely lower than I thought.
Yeah, I lowered it, I think, based upon that. So,
all right, humor.
This was a 2 because
okay, it was way lower than you.
Really?
Did we read the same story?
Yes.
Okay, in the deeper discussion, tell me about some of these. Remind me.
I feel like
I should clarify, I did 0.75, so I was quite a bit lower than you.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. But sometimes when we do this in the quick review, in the deeper discussion we're talking through, we're like, oh, yes. Oh, yeah, okay. There was a lot more humor than I recalled.
Yeah, she made me laugh throughout. She really did.
I love that.
Yeah. I probably shouldn't be. It's
I
funny
chuckled
for
a little
thriller.
bit. Okay, spiciness.
1.5.
Okay. That was what I have.
Oh, okay.
Same.
See, we didn't read the same book. We read the same book, guys.
Tastefully done.
It was. It always is.
Not too
Good
much,
job,
but
Aly.
tastefully done. All right, tears. Where'd you land on tears? I bet you're going to be...
4.
Okay, I knew you'd be higher than me.
Amy.
I did 2.5, and I didn't actually cry. Although, technically, I have to preface. Listeners, I have to preface. I probably would have cried on the scenes that really kind of lent themselves to the heaviness and the tears. I was a bit distracted and kept getting interrupted in my reading. And so I think that probably factored into me not crying. There are definitely a lot of opportunities for tears here, and heavy tears at that.
Amy's personal life interfered with this. It's a 4. It should only be a 4. Shame Shame.
I'll talk more about that in the deeper discussion too. Overall.
As will I.
Overall.
5.
Okay. I did 4.5. So it was fantastic.
It was fantastic. It was a 5 fantastic. 5.
I loved the twists and turns of this story so much. I am obsessed with Aly's writing. She is one of my top tier authors. She's an auto buy for me. I absolutely love her writing.
And I loved her even more. We got the opportunity to meet her at Book Bonanza, and she's one of my favorite humans. She really is. She's so funny. See, Aly, if you ever watch this, you and I, we're best friends.
Overall, this was definitely a solid story with emotion and depth. She gave it a 5.
I gave it a 5. We're best friends.
That concludes our spoiler-free quick review of this story. Now we're going to shift into a deeper book discussion, which is going to include lots of spoilers. So if you haven't read this story, please go check it out and then come back and listen to our deeper discussion. We would absolutely love to connect with you on social media. You can find us on Instagram at Post-Book Depression Podcast, on Facebook in our Post-Book Depression discussion group, and you can always email us at postbookdepressionpodcast@gmail.com. Sarah, this story was a doozy. In this opening scene, Truett, our hero of the story, he's walking us through his Wednesday routine. And he starts his morning. He loves Wednesdays, but he also hates Wednesdays.
Right.
He loves Wednesdays because he gets to start his morning doing a video chat with his daughter, Caitlin. She's 5 years old, and they have the best conversation, and they laugh, and they have a good time. And then after she has to go off to school, it shifts to the worst Wednesday, and he's passing his time. And then at 6 o'clock, he has to go to the grill. There's a restaurant in town that he will go at 6 o'clock. So let's begin our chat with his Wednesday routine.
Initially, I was heartbroken for him because I thought he's happy because he's having these conversations with his daughter, but clearly they're doing it via Skype. So she obviously is somewhere where he cannot see her all the time. And that made me sad. I thought, well, that's kind of a bittersweet that he's not there. I was not sure what was happening on Wednesday evenings, but I knew that just knowing that he only left his house once a week, I thought we were dealing with a character who is suffering from severe agoraphobia.
Me too.
And I thought that for whatever reason, whatever trauma is in his past, that is probably the reason why he is not allowed to have contact with his little girl.
I had the same thought process. We move over into the grill, and Gwen, our lady lead, is there with her friends and their kids. Are there kind of having this interaction, a fun time, and her son is trying to throw spitballs at the other kids that are there. And it's shortly after this that, first of all, I have to say her threats of punishment for the crafts
that was hysterical.
That was a funny moment. You're right. I forgot about that when I was taking my notes. So that would bump up my fun because that goes throughout the whole story.
That is throughout the whole story. There's a scene that was just delightful. Made me laugh out loud. I'm like, I'm so doing that to my son, but he wouldn't enjoy it the way her son secretly does. My son would be like, this is lame.
After she threatens him, he ends up accidentally, quote unquote, throwing a spitwad, and it ends up hitting Truett. And she looks up and he turns around, and this is where they kind of have that initial eye connection. And we start to wonder, they've had a past, but we don't know what the extent of it is at this time.
She goes up to apologize to him. I mean, I do feel bad because his drink is like knocked over on all his food.
On the sandwich and everything.
Ugh, soggy bread, gross. But, she's wanting to take care of it. Truett doesn't have the best response with her.
No, he doesn't.
And she just realizes, okay, this is going nowhere. Let's just go. So I love that she kind of just takes her son and we're going to go get our craft on kind of thing. Like, you're in trouble, mister.
Yeah, we learned that Gwen is starting over. She's recently divorced. She has bought the grill. She's wanting to turn it into a cafe. And so in the coming week, she's planning to do a major renovation. And one of the things the conversations that she has with the waitress, Cooter, or Lucille.
Amy, Cooter is the humor in this story.
You're right. You're right.
How can you not have...
You're right.
Come on. I'm
Okay.
clearly the humor in this.
Allie,
Guys,
I was mistaken.
She was
There's
mistaken.
humor throughout. My rating should have been much higher.
Cooter is so funny. She just the name Cooter. I love that she... Can we just take a segue real quick? Just a side note. Cooter is so funny because she tries to have it on her name tag to say Lucille, and she keeps calling her Miss Lucille. And there's a whole thing that goes back and forth with Gwen's son and Cooter, and she doesn't want her son saying Cooter.
You're right. Oh, my cheeks hurt.
It's so funny.
All right, I dropped the ball on the humor rating. I'm sorry. I fully admit it. I will change my rating in my mind.
I just want to know, how can you forget Cooter? He's in your life now, Amy.
She is in my life.
She's unforgettable.
So I love the conversation that she has with Gwen about wanting to stay on as a waitress and help her out. Plus, she has all the ins and outs of everything.
And that's another funny scene. Her going through the resumes.
The applications, yes.
And she's like, we have to have somebody. And she's like, well. Goes
right.
to tell her how.
You're right. I stand corrected, everybody.
Okay.
I stand corrected.
She bumped it up. See? I knew we would get her.
She has made plans. And so it's the following Wednesday that Truett shows up to have his 6 o'clock appointment. And he is devastated because the grill has a sign on the front door that it is closed for renovations and new ownership.
Amy, this scene kind of made my stomach hurt for him because he is banging on the door. And when Gwen comes around, there's a point where they
kind of have this hatred a little bit.
Yeah, there's some animosity for sure when she opens the door and when he is begging her.
That was agonizing.
It hurt me so bad. I just thought, this guy is clearly dealing with something. We don't know.
Well, Cooter had let her know he comes in every week,
right.
Orders a sandwich, doesn't eat it.
Bacon on the side.
Yeah, bacon on the side. And she finds that strange, but she doesn't know the backstory for it.
And we do know that he has been deployed. We know that. The story bounces back between the past and the present. We know that he has lost some friends, when he was deployed, and he feels as though it is his fault. He has some survivor's guilt with that. I kind of was relating to his Wednesday night that whatever happened when he was deployed was the root cause of his agoraphobia.
Yep.
And you kind of don't really fully understand that it's not really what's happening. I didn't understand the significance. I just thought maybe it was a training exercise in therapy, that he needed to go somewhere familiar every single week to try to work through some of that.
Yeah.
And so it made the begging for her to let him in and for this to not be happening when he's kind of internally thinking, this is just a bad dream. This isn't happening. I'm going to go back and it's going to be open and it's going to be fine. It's really, really sad to read and to just kind of feel this character's agony emotionally of what he's enduring.
Over the next couple of Wednesdays that come and go, there's a few things that transpires. It's raining. She goes out. She invites him to come in and sit. She tells him she doesn't have the capability to make the sandwich, things like that. She's working through this. He sits in the booth for the hour and then he's gone. This happens a couple of Wednesdays. And after a little bit of time, we've already experienced the backstory of when he lost his team in the military and he's holding that guilt, like you said. It's a few weeks that have passed when a man shows up and he is filming a documentary and he's wanting to interview her. He brings up the Water's Edge Mall and asks if she has stayed in contact with Truett. And this really starts to stir a panic in her. As a reader, we don't know yet quite the extensiveness of this and why she's feeling so traumatic over this. And she feels it's her obligation to let Truett know that this man is trying to find him and interview him.
Right.
She goes to his house because he had mentioned that he's still living in the house that he was in it's been 18 years since they've seen each other and have this past that we don't know about the details. And when she shows up, it's here in this scene that we get the first twist.
Right.
He, in casual conversation, drops the fact that his ex-wife has purchased the grill and is turning it into a cafe. Friend, were you so surprised that they were married?
It blew my mind.
It blew my mind too.
It blew my mind. I was completely blown away. I thought that was the first one where I'm like, oh, Aly.
I know.
She got me because I could not figure out, why do they hate one another? Like, why are they? Well, I never felt like he hated her. I felt like, and I didn't really feel like she hated him. I felt there was some pain and some just, it's very hard to be in a room with you.
Yeah.
Kind of emotions, but never full on hatred, I guess. But yeah, my mind was blown. Way to go.
Once he finally drops that bomb on the reader, then we start to pick up on things. She'll make comments about how he's very good about leaving and she's having to do everything on her own and feeling deserted. So you get the understanding and impression that obviously things did not end well for their marriage. They're clearly divorced and some things had transpired.
Right.
When the man who's running this documentary brings up Water's Edge Mall, there are some conversations that are had, and we do get a little bit of a glimpse back into 18 years ago. One of the things that we learn about Truett is he does not like to be called a hero.
Right.
He doesn't like to be portrayed in any kind of good light with that scenario. We get the impression that he saved many people from a shooting that happened at this mall. We don't know the details of that, but we do get a little backstory with that. We know that he was there. We know that he sees Gwen from the glass door. She's on the outside of the locked doors, and he has to make a choice to go after the shooter. At this point, that's all we know about what has happened at the mall.
Right.
So it adds to his level of guilt and things that he's dealing with. It's kind of elevated. So it's not just the war people, the war loss that he suffered. It's also this guilt and responsibility that he is carrying over this shooting that's happened. And we don't really know all of the details of that.
I will say one of the things that, going back to when she rushes over to his house, she rushes immediately after her first encounter with Folly to warn Truett. Even though there's not hatred, she lashes out in anger because he is not responding quite the way she thought. First of all, he won't let her in the house, which is odd to her. But secondly, he's not really responding, like she's not surprised, and he lets her know he's been in constant contact. He keeps contacting me, which kind of answers a question because we know that he's been silencing his phone and deleting emails.
Yes.
But she gets frustrated because he did not feel that he needed to extend the same courtesy to her.
Yeah.
And at that point, Gwen is so furious that it does make you kind of wonder what all went on, because we know she wasn't in the mall. She was on the outside.
Yeah.
And she immediately leaves and basically like, you know what, do whatever you do. You didn't have the courtesy to come tell me. And you know that it's a little bit more serious, but I still could not figure it out.
Same.
Also, I have to make note that the reason why I thought he wasn't letting her in his house, and I could not, this is one of the things that
I'm curious to know where your mind was on the house thing.
I was so confused, honestly, with the whole timeline. I kept trying to figure out.
The timeline was confusing for me too.
When was he in the war? When did the shooting happen?
How old were they when they were married?
How old were they when they were married? If he has agoraphobia and he's had it for several years, how does he have a 5-year-old daughter? And once he and the child's mom had a lot of love between them, but they don't have a great relationship now.
Because they never communicate on the video chats ever.
Yeah, and I felt stupid later on. But all these things, and so I thought he didn't want her coming in the house because he didn't want her knowing that at any point he had moved on.
I don't know that necessarily crossed my mind, because she does see, I don't recall the details of when she sees the keychain.
But that's after he tells her he says, any more kids? And she says, no, just your son. And she says, what about you? And he says, no, just the one.
Yeah. I don't really know, to be honest, where my headspace was on the house. It was definitely a red flag for me. I kind of expected it to be a hoarder situation, if I'm being honest.
I didn't, because she says something about him being very neat.
Well, that's when I started to question my thought process there. And Daniel, his brother, which, by the way, is a psychiatrist, coming over, I found it interesting, one, that he would come over and do some therapy. He'd already mentioned that, his doctors come to see him. He does things. So it made me wonder if they knew what was happening in the house.
Yeah. I didn't really think... when Daniel is there, it doesn't seem odd. It doesn't seem like any, I mean, other than just not leaving your home, it doesn't seem odd to me or that anything is amiss. It seems like he lives in a normal household.
Same.
It isn't until he won't let her in that I thought,
Something's
what's going on? And she's just trying to get him, well, let's just go to the backyard. And he doesn't want her to. Just found it interesting.
Yes.
But the point that I wanted
did
to
make
make was, even though she doesn't have hatred to him, she is very upset that he did not want to, he did not feel the need to let her know, hey, this documentary is coming out and this guy may approach you. And that made me kind of sad for her.
Absolutely. She continues on the renovation, and he is wanting a second chance with her. They're starting to have a little bit of a chemistry connection rekindling. They're flirty, they're banter. He's wanting to help her save some money by help with some labor on that. So they spend some time doing the renovations in here, and she's kind of coming around to the booth that he sits in every week. And so far, she's had all the demo except the booth.
Right.
He still
Makes him a
comes.
sandwich.
On the Wednesday night, he still has that. She gives him a key on the weeks that she can't be there to let him in. And I just really enjoyed watching this second chance kind of chemistry unfold between them.
I love it when he comes in on a Thursday because at one point she says, I'm not going to be here next week, so here's the key. And he is in agony because he can't go 2 weeks. Also, I found it interesting because we find out that what he's doing there during this hour is he's basically torturing himself. He's allowing himself to wallow in his grief and his guilt of losing his fellow soldiers, his friends, his family. And he kind of allows that 1 hour to just be in that room where he survives and they do not. And it's really heartbreaking, but it frustrates him the first Wednesday because Gwen silences that for him.
Yeah.
And it stops that. He becomes distracted by her dancing to her music. And
that angers him, though.
It angers him at first, but then he kind of relishes in that peace that she gives him during that time. So I love when he comes on a Thursday and she says to him, you know, yesterday was Wednesday, right? And then he offers to come help her on a Saturday.
I love that Daniel, his brother, kind of helped him work through that, telling him, you set this schedule, you can change it.
That was my first indication of he does not have agoraphobia.
Me too.
Something else is going on, but he does not have agoraphobia, which I found very interesting.
When he comes back and he's, talking through all of this and they're trying to work through things there's all this good gooiness happening. They do start to have to come to a head with some of the friction that they have and the trauma of the past and kind of working through that. We know that they were married for a while, and it's in around this time where he brings up the fact that one of the closest friends that he had in this loss in the military was in fact her brother. Right. That was another twist I didn't see coming.
I know. Yeah, when he asked if Nate is named after Nathaniel, and she says, well, kind of. We named him Nathan because I didn't want him having to carry that for the rest of his life. It was really sad, especially when we get these little snippets of the past and you realize, okay, so one, for instance, is the funeral when she comes in and he makes the mention that she's still wearing her wedding rings, but his is buried in the back of the closet, and she tries to undress him and change him. And he says, I'm not going. Because at one point she's playing music. I think it's that Saturday morning that he comes and he says, this is kind of sad. Are we at a funeral or what? And she makes the comment of, like, you would know what a funeral is.
Oof, yeah.
Because he didn't attend. I kept thinking he didn't go to her brother's funeral.
Same. Aly did that on purpose. I'm certain of it.
She's so brilliant.
The way she wrote that
inside her head.
Yeah, the way she wrote that was very intentional. I'm certain of it.
Yes.
Because at that point, that's what we know. We know Nathaniel has died. And so that is the funeral that we automatically, we
assume she's referring to. It's really sad because there's points where he thinks back to how she would comfort him from behind and cry. But he didn't want that comfort. He wanted her anger and her wrath because he feels responsible. There was just a lot of self-torture going on that was very hard to read because, you want to say, hey, don't feel that way. She's not blaming you. But, that's where we fight ourselves sometimes in our minds as humans. So
it is. Let's go to the major mind-blown twist. She comes to the house and she's wanting to go inside, and he's very adamant, no.
Which is another funny scene, honestly, Amy, because he's going back and forth with her. She comes to cook for him. They're going to first. Let's hold on. Let's backtrack just a smidgy with you.
Okay.
We talked about how they're starting to have these feelings. It's very conflicting for her because they're divorced.
Yeah.
She still doesn't understand why. Hooter gives her sound advice. Oh, the name. I can't. Aly, you're so funny. She gives her very sound advice of the 3 marriages. Is he husband number 1, number 2, or number 3?
Yes.
So she makes the decision she wants to try again.
He's number
because
3.
They've had a kiss. They've had some moments. He tells her, I want to make a go of this. I don't want to let you go again.
Yes.
She gets upset. You're already thinking you're going to let me go again. Anyway.
I want to say that was very mature that he was upfront with his feelings.
Sure.
And wanting to reconcile.
I know. And it happened very rapidly, but it's like they said they're soulmates. So that didn't bother me. It didn't feel insta-lovey.
No, it didn't.
She goes to cook dinner. He won't let her in. And I can just see the kind of dancing around. Let's go to the cafe. She's like, there's paint fumes. He's like, I love fumes. Let's go.
Oh,
That's
yeah, the
funny.
banner.
Instantly, it's like you can see this funny movie playing in your head. But the second she gets around, she's like, haha, I got in. And then all the music
It's like
stops.
sucked out the air in the room. And she sees and she trips over Caitlin's shoe, which he had already mentioned earlier in like an inner dialogue conversation. And she has this moment of panic and she goes to Caitlin's room. And friend, this is the moment that we learn.
The little girl on his keychain that she says cute picture
is their daughter.
And
she's not living.
Oh, Amy.
I know.
And he's kept the house the same for 18 years.
My mind is spiraling.
I have never been more taken back. I'm trying to think of a book that just blew my mind in the way, and I feel like I should have picked up on it, but I really, truly didn't. And then I started thinking about, when he is Skyping, quote unquote Skyping, the mom is never in the picture.
Nope.
She
is in the picture, but she doesn't address the camera.
Talk to him. And I thought, oh, you should have known. And I didn't. I did not see it coming that they had a little girl together.
There was quite a bit of foreshadowing that of obviously looking back, you can pick up on. He has a thought when he's going home one night about the possibility of a future he'd wanted, and he mentions their daughter in that. And I thought, to myself, I thought, okay, he has a daughter, so he just assumes that they would have a
That's
a daughter.
what I thought too, because he says daughter and son.
Yes.
And I'm thinking, oh, his daughter, her son. Got it.
And then also the mall settlement.
Yeah.
They talk about the mall settlement as well, which, okay, she wasn't even in the mall, so why would she be a part of that settlement? There were little foreshadowing things like that.
The funeral.
The funeral as well. And then, of course, the videos as well. But we don't really get the full impact of that video until we get the scene later where we're reliving that scene, knowing full well what has happened. And Sarah, that was where I should have cried. And I would have. Had I not been distracted, because that was heartbreaking.
When she realizes
to her.
what the house looks like, and he sits down on the couch and she asks him some questions and she thinks he's not going to say anything. She's like, I'm done. I'm gone. She's leaving. And then he finally starts talking to her. And she says, okay, we're leaving. We are not staying in this house. And you get the whole mall scene. Oh, I'm not going to cry. I sobbed like a baby reading that mall scene. I love when she takes him to her house, because what he says to her in his house is that she's alive when she's here. It's when I step outside, I don't want to be a part of a reality where she's not living.
And that was his explanation. He's like, I'm not afraid to be outside.
I'm not afraid of people.
Yes, I'm afraid to be outside in a world where she doesn't exist, or she's not alive.
So profound when she says she is alive, and she takes him to her house. And it's so warm and it's cheery and there's flowers and the curb appeal is amazing. And when she walks through the door and he walks in behind her. He sees Nate and he sees Caitlin and he sees all these pictures and it's warm and she's alive and she has photo albums of those 6 months when they were separated. Pictures he's never seen before, and they stay up and she tells stories and it's so amazing and it's so beautiful. What I loved so much more though was, can we talk about the moment where he meets her son officially?
Yes, let's do it.
So her son comes home. He's there. They're having hot wings. He gets him a gift,
I love
which
the
is a
gift.
crafting. So funny. But then he gets him another one, which is like, they're basically those Harry Potter little jelly beans that taste disgusting or they taste great. I've had those. They're disgusting. But, you know, boys love that stuff. I love when he is talking to him about his tattoos and he says, "What's your favorite?" And he shows them his side and it is Fiona Iona, I think is the name.
Yeah.
And he's thinking, how do you know that? And they go up to the playroom and she has framed both of her kids' artwork.
And the different like characters that impacted their lives.
Yeah. And it just, he is seeing that Caitlin has been kept alive. And it's just, I love that
And
the
they watched
shift.
the videos of her
the
as well.
home videos.
Yeah.
And how Nate is so familiar with
I
that when
love
he says,
that.
"I love this." And I love when he says, "That's my sister." It's just so beautiful. And I love that you can kind of see this shift in Truett where he doesn't want to go back to his house.
Yeah.
Because he wants to be in this place where there's life and there's joy and there's happy moments. I was so happy for him and at the same time so heartbroken for him that it took him 18 years to get to that point.
Yeah. That's almost 2 full decades of life that he's
just
missed
can't-
out on.
I
That's
can't
so
even-
much time. So much time. I love that he got to meet Nate and that they hit it off right off the out of the gate, and they just start having this relationship. Just very,
Yeah.
you know,
Just that one time, but it's
Initial.
great and it's fantastic.
We haven't talked yet about Gwen's ex, Jeff, and the reasons for their divorce, but we learn, along with Truett, when they're having a moment of intimacy, and she makes the comment, "It's nice to not throw up after having sex with someone," which makes Truett livid. Livid. We learn a little bit more about the abuse that Jeff has put on Gwen, and Truett takes off after him. Let's talk about this scene.
He kind of steals her car keys and just takes her car because she's in the shower. Yeah, he knows that he's not physically abusive, but he was a narcissist and definitely emotionally abusive to Gwen. Just goes, I cannot believe, I just think, wow, you really, you get back in the world and then you just storm into a lawyer's office ready to just
I thought
whoops
he
and
hasn't,
tell.
he hasn't driven in 2 decades, and he just hops in a car like it's an old bike.
Riding a bike. Yeah, just drives over there and storms past the secretary and just basically blasts into Jeff, and there's a altercation. Man, that guy was annoying.
He was so annoying. I really, really, really loved that the police officers that showed up, when they learned his name, knew who he was. They were not supportive of him being physical against Jeff, but just in helping him kind of take control of the situation. Jeff throws out the worst words to Truett, throws, just horrible, unthinkable things he says to him about Caitlin. And the police officers were absolutely on Truett's side.
I kind of loved that. I'm not one for like cops not abiding by the laws, but on this one, because they had family that were in that mall and they knew Truett's story and what had transpired there, I was kind of happy that they were like, no, that was totally justified for him to like ram him.
Unsurprisingly, Folly is out with his camera and all that when he's coming out handcuffed. You knew that was going to explode a little bit and escalate. And sure enough, Jeff files an emergency hearing to try and get custody of Nate because he has been hit by Truett and he's wanting to escalate. He's got video footage, quote unquote, from this
Not in a
guy.
safe environment.
Let's talk about this courtroom scene, which I absolutely loved in the best way.
I was so terrified when she gets served the papers because I really thought Truett's going to leave. She's thinking Truett's going to leave.
Oh, I did too.
I also did think to myself, though, as a mom, as much as I love Truett, there's no way I would lose my child.
Yes.
But I love Truett saying, I'm going to take care of this. I'm going to fix this. And I love the way she describes him walking in, just like in his nice suit, and he's got kind of his entourage of people behind him.
Yes.
It was just so delightful. I did not like that Jeff walked in a neck brace and a big bandage on his
laughed out
nose
loud
when
when
it wasn't. It was just a little bit of swelling. It wasn't even bruised.
It makes you think of those like Judge Judy
I
kind
know.
of people over that are
So
over the
ridiculous.
top.
Well, and the judge was not happy because he kind of threw some weight around to try
Yeah.
to get that. I felt like this court scene could not have gone better. I love that Jeff kind of just dug a massive hole for himself.
Oh, yes.
And
It was,
you know,
I wanted to get some popcorn and just watch it
know.
on the front row.
he was being held in contempt. I'm like, rightfully so. You should be arrested. Go away, sir. It just ended really well and in favor of Gwen.
Yeah.
You know, to be able to not lose custody of Nate. I love Truett fighting for her and their family and standing up, and also just that it was kind of very quickly without a lot of angst involved that they took care of the whole Jeff situation. Because I thought, please don't.
I
let
know
this
I
get
didn't want
super
that. I
angsty.
didn't want it to get angsty either, like custody battle and all
Right.
of that. In the coming days and weeks after, she is ready to do her grand opening, and I just love that when she does that, she reveals that she's changed the name to The Haven, which is Caitlin's middle name. So freaking special.
I cried.
It was just, I mean, I can see why you did.
It's cut out. She cut out his booth
In the booth.
and spelled The Haven.
The Haven. I know. I love it. I love it so
I
much.
can't- oh.
Because I
Bald
was
like a
wondering,
baby.
how are they going to incorporate the booth into it? Because they'd already
was
talked about
too.
the design and all of that. And I thought, what a creative way to keep her daughter in the story, because we didn't really talk about the booth's connection to everything. We mentioned the sandwich.
let's do that real quick.
So the sandwich was something that they had ordered when he brought his buddies from the military there. He was supposed to get a burger.
Yeah.
And ended up a club sandwich. So this was kind of a double entendre situation. He's got the military friends that he's honoring here at the booth with the sandwich, but then he also, let's talk about Caitlin and how she's connected to the booth.
So there was a night, Truett was having a very hard time. He was struggling, and it was Caitlin's night to be there. And he's getting ready to take his own life, to take some pills, and he hears Caitlin holler for him. And he panics and thinks, what day is it? Oh my goodness, it's Wednesday. I have Caitlin. In that moment, he realizes, I need help. I need more help. What if she had found me? And he looks at her, and she shouts to her mom, hey, he's here. And he thinks, I promised myself I would be a better father than what I had had. No more. This is never going to happen again. I'm going to be the best father. So he says, do you want to go to the grill? And she's so excited.
Yes, she is.
says, go. And they go to the
She
grill.
knows he doesn't leave his house.
He doesn't leave his house at this time. And they go and they get a club sandwich. And I love bacon on the side because at the time that him and Gwen were married, she was a vegetarian. And so he and Caitlin had this secret little thing from her that he would sneak her some meat.
Yes.
I love that there is one scene where he says something about bacon, and she said, bacon's not an animal.
I know.
So sweet. And he takes her, and that is the connection that he took her
At
on
6
a Wednesday
o'clock.
night at 6:00 and got the same sandwich that he had gotten with his buddies. And then it's I believe like the next day or something, they are having, then he goes in, he gets help at a in-care facility,
Yes.
which is how he gets these videos. He's being emailed these little conversations or the times that he gets to talk with her. That's where those videos come
It was
from.
so sad when we watched that scene the second time and he's pausing. Like he would normally pause it to respond to her, and you're getting the full story. Oh, that was heart-wrenching.
Yeah.
But as part of his treatment, that's how he
They end up at the mall,
mall.
and it's his first outing. And he's there with his therapist, and his brother is there as well.
Yeah.
That helps treat him and is kind of there for Caitlin. And he loses his therapist and his daughter in that, but his brother and him survive.
So I love the homage that she paid to the booth in the restaurant. I thought that was just a really creative way to incorporate the booth into that.
I loved how she surprised him with that. She was kind of secretive at the end, and just the awe that he has that she was able to surprise him and do that was just incredible. The story is absolutely remarkable, and it's not one that I will soon forget. I loved it. It has just enough thrill to it at little parts. It definitely has mystery.
Oh, yes.
Because you do not know what's going to come.
The twists and turns. Yeah. I also liked for their happily ever after that he does go and get therapy.
I know.
Especially for the house stuff and working through all of that. I was kind of hoping that was the direction that Aly would take it, just because it was 20 years almost of living with that, and that wouldn't soon go away. He would have to work through that. Right.
And she handled that incredibly well. And then they finally... It ends with them being happy and remarried. And it was such an amazing story.
I loved it.
I loved it too. Well, that concludes our discussion of Alone with You. We hope you enjoyed it and want to continue the conversation with us. You can hit us up on Instagram at Postbook Depression Podcast, or you can hit us up on Facebook at Postbook Depression Discussion Group. You can also email us at postbookdepressionpodcast@gmail.com. Until next time, keep reading.